I'm excited to introduce my next guest, James Haley, author of the fictional account, but man, it sounds accurate, called The Shores of Tripoli, Lieutenant Putnam and the Barbary Pirates. It's out now. James, welcome.
Thank you. You know, I feel like I really know you already. When I show up in bookstores and people look at me and go, "Who are you? I thought this was Kilmeade's new book."
Your book's going to do well. You actually went back into the logs you were just telling me about the war, but yet you wrote it in a fictional way accurately.
Well, people want stories, and I'm a big believer in historical literacy. When you think how not one person in 20 can tell you the three branches of government or who the first 5 presidents were, well, when you put costumes on people, people believe it. So I wanted to give them a story that they could enjoy. But by God, I wanted them to know the history, too.
Tell me about this story from your perspective. What you thought going in and what you think now?
Well, my biggest thing was the idea originated with Putnam, that there's never been an American tall ship Navy hero. You know, Hornblower, Jack Aubrey are all British. They're all Napoleonic. And there's an editor at Putnam who thought, well, we had a great Navy. We had great traditions. We had great stories. So let's do this. And I wound up with the job. And I was really guided by the history. There's 2 ways you can do this. You can either tell your story and hang some history on it, like Christmas tinsel. That gets you to Braveheart, which was an interesting movie, but very little in there actually happened. A
lot of people died.
Yeah.
But William Wallace was quartered, I heard.
Oh, that he was. I'm not sure that he was screaming freedom as he died. But,
right.
Or you can line up the history and drive a story through it like Michener used to do. And I've maintained for years that the truth is more interesting than what you can make up. And look at the Barbary War.
So a lot of people say, well, you got the War of 1812. We just had an anniversary on that. And you had the Revolutionary War. Every kid learns about that. What's the significance of this war?
Well, it was the first major war we had. It gained us the respect of Europe. Just knowing that our Navy was really something to be proud of. In fact, when they passed the Navy Act in 1794, the purpose was to oppose the Barbary Pirates. And it took years to build those ships. I mean, those ships were...
And that was Washington that commissioned those ships.
Yes. And, of course, when we wound up making peace with France, is okay, we'll stop building them, we'll mothball them. And then when the Barbary states started taking our ships, well, they finished those ships. A lot of people think of old sailing ships as being kind of dinky. These frigates, I mean, you look at a big football stadium like Rose Bowl, a frigate would fill that place.
Yeah. And we actually had this really cool wood, this very strong wood that was able to build the Constitution and other ships like this.
Yeah, those hulls are 2 feet thick. And they're a sandwich of live oak between white oak. And after the War of 1812, when the Constitution came home, she had 12 British cannonballs embedded in her hull, not counting, which is the old Ironsides.
Yeah.
Now, English ships, English oak is very brittle. And so a cannonball would hit and it would shower splinters and just tear people apart.
So in this book, you also talk about a land war, correct?
Yes, a lot of people don't realize that we didn't beat Tripoli at sea. After we bombarded Tripoli a couple of times and wrecked their waterfront, we realized we can't defeat these people from the sea. And William Eaton, General Eaton, got permission to land at Alexandria. And see, the bad guy in Tripoli that we were fighting was a usurper. He did not belong on the throne. He had exiled his older brother to the deserts of Egypt.
Killed the other brother.
Yep. And which is kind of traditional. I mean, the Emperor of Morocco killed 3 of his brothers.
Okay, why not?
Yeah. But Eaton found the real Pasha, made a deal with him. You round up mercenaries, and we'll march across the Libyan desert. And when they assaulted the town of Derna, which is sort of the breadbasket and the treasury of the whole country, then Yusuf in Tripoli decided, well, okay, I'm toast. We'll make a deal. And unknown to General Eaton, there was a guy named Tobias Lear, as you know, who had been George Washington's kind of skeezy secretary, went behind Eaton's back, did a deal with Tripoli to end the war, and just sent the real Pasha back to the deserts. I mean, it's an incredible story. And that's where, you know, the victory at Derna was the first place the American flag had been raised in victory, so the shores of Tripoli.
We ended up getting the Pasha a little bit of money for his trouble and for what he did, but in the end, and that's actually where the Marines would get their sword. They still use ceremonial today.
Absolutely.
That you could find in the Marine Museum.
Absolutely.
So being that you, and we're talking with Jim Haley. He's the author of Shores of Tripoli. Being, Jim, that you've gotten so much to the truth, why not make it nonfiction?
Because I didn't want to compete with you, frankly. I mean, your book and Ian Toll's Six Frigates, there are really good nonfiction books out there. Plus, like I said, it's time to have an American naval series. You know, when C.S. Forrester wrote Horatio Hornblower, when he did Beat to Quarters in 1937, he had no thought of it being a series. And neither did Patrick O'Brien when he did Master and Commander. So there's prequels and sequels, and they're a mess. And the people at Putnam said, let's start from the beginning with Teenage Midshipmen and do the series from there, which I thought was brilliant.
You know, it's been the most gratifying thing is when you bring up, everybody knows Thomas Jefferson. Nobody knows William Eaton.
Right.
Stephen Decatur, some.
Yep.
And now you have Edward Preble. Anybody in the Navy knows them. So
They're only in the Navy.
Yeah, but when I go traveling around now, I'm getting emails. So I got an email from Ben Decatur at the University of Michigan.
No way.
Yeah, he's a sophomore, and he said, you know, we talked a little bit about my ancestor, but not that much. I can't believe I'm related to this guy. And then who showed up, Allison, in Orlando? A member of the Preble family showed up in Orlando. This guy cannot believe that this is my ancestor. And, of course, you see Preble up by Syracuse, upstate New York. And you go, it's got to be the same one.
Oh, my.
So it's amazing that some people are realizing how special their ancestors are.
And that's the coolest thing about doing it as a novel, is when you do the history, there are people that you kind of have to leave off the stage who are so cool. Look at the King of Naples, Ferdinand III. I mean, he was never meant to be king. He was raised on the docks with the fishwives, and all of a sudden he's king. But he's the guy who gave us, you know, the gunboats and the powder and the shot to take the war down to Tripoli. And yet the stories you can tell about this uncouth man, he's just too cool to leave out. And when you write a novel, you've got the freedom to develop them as characters.
Right. And now this novel came out when?
A week ago.
A week ago. So it's now out. Go out and scoop up The Shores of Tripoli. Lieutenant Putnam, not Presley, O'Bannon. Lieutenant Putnam and the Barbary on the Barbary Pirates, too. James, this is also a reason. You got to get this book if you're a Marine, right?
Yes. Oh, yes. In fact, I was in Annapolis yesterday, and there were some Marines came up to me and said, we need this book.
Right,
So,
and they all learn about it because the Marine hymn, too.
yes.
From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli.
And as in your experience, a lot of it they already knew, but they want to read about it as a story.
Right, and the thing is, too, there is a sequel coming every way. It's got to be from you because they had to go back under Madison and finish these guys off for good and got deals with Algeria, Morocco, which was pretty much in line, Tunisia, and, of course, Tripoli.
Now, that's 1815, the Second Barbary War. So we got to get through the War of 1812 in the second book.
Right, in between, go 1812, where you're just taking on the world's naval superpower in England.
Yep.
And if it wasn't for this war, they probably wouldn't have been able to hold their own, which they did.
Yeah, I love it that England finally, there was an order that said never take on an American frigate unless you can do it 2-1.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, thanks so much, James Haley, for coming in. The Shores of Tripoli. Always great to hear from you, Jim. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. I've appreciated it.